because I went to Target for this jacket and it doesn't close. It said 40 too long, which is right, but so now I gotta go back to Target. I have to wish that Mr. A's was still open. I have to wish that gas station was still open. Because when you go to Target, this is what happens. I also want to pay respect to Mikey O. If you've been following his, oh, you get a woo. If you've been following him on his Facebook, he's been featuring graduates, a variety of graduates, and they're usually got a little ideal flavor to them. And a lot of our kids, a lot of our youth don't get that focus. But you go to his Facebook page and there's a picture and there's a story and it's either a high school graduate or a college graduate, maybe even an 8th grade graduate, and he's been focusing on them. And not enough focus is put on the young people here in the city. And Mikey is doing a real good job of that. So, I noticed that. I also noticed that the budget cuts have taken away the podium. Well, thank you for that. So now I'm going to have sheets of paper and no podium. It's okay. Don't go looking for a podium. It's just me. And a minute ago, somebody said that she had some ties to the Von Humboldt School, which I think is very, very cool. Because the first Boys and Girls Club program that I ran was out of the Von Humboldt School. So I was tight with the Von Humboldt kids until they opened up the new Boys and Girls Club over in Bristol, Washington. I was the first director there. So everything I've done for the last, since 1986, has been working with the youth. It's Boys and Girls Club for 22 years. And then budget cuts came along in 2008, and I landed at a charter school, and I'm working at a CPS school, and everything that I've done has always been youth-based. Even the radio work that I've done has been youth-based because I used to teach kids radio work and then put them on the air over at the old 90.5. And then when I was doing work at 1450, I was sneaking kids in to do interviews and stuff like that. So everything's, to me, about the youth because the youth are going to make better decisions when it comes to their clothing line. And we just lost one of our kids this past weekend, a kid named Sammy Lopez. And this happens too much in our line of work. Kids are gone. People that you know are gone. The pandemic, my original theme was going to be, let's talk about the pandemic and how this is affecting everybody. But it's affecting everybody in the same way. You know, we got a mask. We're keeping social distance, which I invented when I was coming up. Ain't nobody wanted to come close to me. So, social distancing, me and females, that's been a thing. Now I'm cool. You don't have to laugh at that. And now, it's a shame because I work at a school and the kids are playing, I got them playing shadow tag because you can't touch each other. That's not true. They have to step on each other's shadow because you cannot touch. Well, there you go, shadow tag tomorrow at your school. So they're playing shadow tag. They can't be elbow to elbow, shoulder to shoulder. It's like the strangest thing for them. So we try to make it productive and fun, but you can't touch them, which you wouldn't have done years ago. Anyway, Tamika. Elbow bunch. And you know what the coolest thing is? It's funny, I was showing them, and it's not even written here yet. I haven't even started yet. But I was telling them because they couldn't do the tagging, I said, you guys should do like the toe tap, like Kid and Play. And they don't know Kid and Play, so we bring up the YouTube, and they gave them permission to do the Kid and Play toe tap. Now they know what that is. So they don't have to do the whole touching and bumping, and then we're doing health screening, as you know. We got a custom on our computer. I got a mask tan, which I didn't used to have. I'm shaving, and this isn't real either. I'm shaving, and I'm wondering, I've got a skin condition all of a sudden. I'm trying to scrape it off, and it's a tan, but I didn't know. Yeah, I went to Wells. I'm proud of it. Anyhow, thank you again for the respect, for inviting me to participate in this very special Entonces event, and the opportunity to share my story that they're all laughing at. So I'm going to beer left. Because my decision tonight was not to tell my story. There are stories that people cannot tell because they're not here anymore. We've lost so many people. I'm going to a street sign ceremony on Wednesday for somebody who I came up with at the radio station on 28th and Bridgeway, and he's got a street sign. Unfortunately, one of the reasons he's going to get a street sign is he's not here anymore. And then Adolfo, who you know as Shabadoo, we went to the same school. We went to the same Boys and Girls School. We were friends. And I was just with his brother the other day because they did May 11th, for his birthday became Shabadoo Day in Chicago. The city council put through because a few of us decided to put bugs in the ear of all the internet and all the Venezuela. So we didn't know May 11th was actually Shabadoo Day, and he's one of us. So these are the things that you try to do when you focus on kids that have grown up and done well. And today's the first day in a week that I haven't had to do a health screener, so yeah. Anyhow, so my thought today or tonight would be to talk about some of the people that aren't here to tell their stories. And I'll tell a little bit of their stories because I don't have a lot of time. So I'll do as much as I can. And even though they're no longer here, their stories will be. If I'm looking down, it's because I'm reading, not because I'm not paying attention to you. You may or may not know I worked 22 full-time years and 10 part-time years with the Boys and Girls Club, one in Westtown, and then the original one, we cut the ribbon in Normal Park. In addition, I did radio work forever. I was a program director and an instructor. I had a bunch of kids go through my 90.5 FM back in the day. And then recently, we've been doing live stream and podcast shows, because that's what everybody does now. Everybody's a radio type now, yay. Well, it's okay, but you should be good. You should sound like you know what you're doing. And then you should kind of clean up a little bit behind you, so it doesn't, you know, you got mom in the background, cabbage patching, and you don't even know. I guess it's nice, I don't know. Anyhow, I've met so many, and become friends with so many, including Mikey tonight, and a bunch of the comics that he has, they've been through my radio shows. But we've also lost people, which I'm going to talk about tonight. So we'll turn it down a little bit. The street sign ceremony on Wednesdays for Magic Juan Suarez. Magic Juan Suarez and I both started at 90.5 FM at the same time. It was 1985, December. And what stood out with Magic Juan was that he was blind. When he passed away, they gave him some news coverage on NBC5. And Magic Juan had a real interesting story because obviously he was from Little Village. Little Village at the time, the Tribune would put out these articles on In the Heart of Gangland. And then they would go ahead and talk about whatever was happening in Little Village. I got interviewed for that article and I still have it. And the headline still says In the Heart of Gangland. And yeah, it's in the heart of Gangland, but they're forgetting that there's so many other hearts in that land.
Oh, yeah.
And it's irritating. They focus on all the things that happen every now and then they don't talk about the things that happen on a daily basis. Little Village is families, Little Village is food, Little Village is the elote man, Little Village is so many more things that are always getting in trouble. And it annoyed me because I worked there for so long. I'm like, I love this neighborhood. Now, it's 2 a.m. Other people love that neighborhood too. So you have to kind of be a little bit careful about what you were doing. But that's where Juan and I started back in 1986. And yeah, it was gangland, and people talked about it in terms of maybe they shouldn't have talked about it, but remember the food. Remember the families. For those of you who are not familiar with Magic Juan, he was at WCYC, WCEV, WROL. He was also a radio personality on a few other stations. He was a nightclub DJ. I would watch Juan work, and he would feel the grooves on the records. This is how he knew what he was playing. And then he would feel the album covers, and this is how he figured out, I'm like, how does this guy know what he's playing? That's exactly how he did it. And he did nightclub work too. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, he's in heaven now. He just passed away recently. But he did everything he did while he was blind. And this year, Alderman Mike Rodriguez is going to give him a street sign. That is very, very cool. And they've been asked to help host that. So I will be there for Juan. And I'm sure Juan will be there in some way, shape, or form as well. And Juan had it. I mean, he died of the same cancer that took his wife, that took took his wife's twin sister and took his 23-year-old daughter, Brianna, and they knew them all. Both of the adults were radio students of mine, and then Brianna I got to meet as a kid. It just stinks, but that's what's happening. He had cancer, then he ended up getting COVID, and unfortunately, he's not here, but he'll be up there, and his sign will be there forever, hopefully on the day. We also lost my father during this time. He was 80 years old, so he put in a lot of time. It's another senior home story, though, where you find out he's gone by going to visit him on Thanksgiving and he's not there. And then you start asking questions, and the maintenance guy is telling you, oh, I said, murió. And then you're trying to figure out how is it that your father passes away in a senior home, and they don't have anybody's information, and you're finding out from the maintenance guy. He's in heaven now. So thankfully, he passed away, but he got to see the Cubs win the World Series. And if you're the old school Puerto Rican from here, and you're a Cub fan, one of the last gifts I gave him was the DVD of the Cubs World Series because it had a Spanish track on it. And when I gave him the gift, we're sitting there watching Game 7 in Spanish, which wouldn't have happened without that technology. So we got to do that for Pop. So, thank you, Pop. Now you got to see a World Series and you're watching me now and you're telling me to hurry up because we only got 10 minutes before the red light goes on. He also was a security guy at Von Humboldt School. Somebody mentioned Von Humboldt School too. And it was crazy because he's the security guy at Von Humboldt School. I took over a Boys and Girls Club in Von Humboldt School, and it was the weirdest thing. And then he would show up to the club because he wanted to be the security guy at the club, and I had to have a conversation with him. And the conversation ended with him no longer volunteering. It just wasn't. We're the Romans. We get along, we don't always like each other. Nelson Fast Forward Cruz is a well-known music producer and performer. He was based out of New York. I met him when he was in town for a performance at an event that I was hosting. We became friends to the point that he preferred to stay with me when he was in town. It also meant that he occasionally got followed home by people that just finished watching him perform. So all of a sudden there's after parties at my apartment, thank you, Nelson. He ended up becoming a healthcare worker, and he also ended up getting the virus. So he's no longer here. So Nelson Cruz, rest in peace. We talked about Adolfo a little while ago. One of the things that Adolfo liked about me was that I called him Adolfo. He's like, everybody calls me Shabba-Doo or Ozone. I'm like, yeah, but your name's Adolfo. He says, yeah, but it's Shabba-Doo and Ozone. We became friends after an interview years ago, and it turned out that he was a Wells kid, he was a Boys and Girls Club kid, he went to Cooley and a couple of other schools, and he always loved his Chicago roots, that he would come back to Chicago in order to teach kids street dancing, break dancing, spinning, whatever you want to call it, footworking. And Adolfo left in December. And I was with his brother the other day when we were doing the honorary day for him. So rest in peace, Adolfo. Breaking 2, breaking the Electric Boogaloo, Lambada, which was not a great movie, but he was in it. He choreographed for Madonna, Lionel Richie, Shaka Khan, and like I said, went to Talk Out Wells and Cooley, and he came up at Cabrini Green. So I always think about Adolfo, especially now that he's gone, but the fact that he has so many Chicago ties, that he's one of the people that I wanted to talk about this morning. Ooh, Mikey's gonna know this name. Troy Winston. Troy Winston and I went to Wells at the same time. Class of 77 to class of 81 to kind of sort of GED. Troy, and again, we started in 77. Troy was probably the first gay friend that most of us had at Wells back then, again, 1977. And we never judged Troy
what are you drinking?
on whether or not he was
No,
gay.
I'm good, man. We're just drinking Sprite. Just Sprite, man. I'm good.
No,
I'm good, man. I'm good. Thank you. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it.
He was always smiling, he was always laughing, he was always dancing.
This guy's my compadre. I've known him since I was 7, and I'm 54.
These guys are
You know who one of his best friends is? George
And he would
Lopez,
show up at all
the
the
actor.
comedy events as well. And the house
Yeah.
music and
Every time he comes
freestyle
into
events.
town, sends him,
Troy
gives him
also
as many
went
tickets
ahead
as he wants.
recently, and,
I've seen him 3 times
He
already.
lived in Vegas
Yeah.
for a little while, so I would see him on the street all the time, and the kid was always hugging, he was always happy. If everybody had Troy's energy, if you knew Troy, then that would be a good thing. And I'm sorry that he's gone, but I'm glad that he was here, because if you got to know him, you wouldn't forget that you knew Troy. Troy was just one of those guys. Benji, you probably don't know Benji Espinosa. Benji Espinosa ran the DJ International record pool, and he ran the DJ International record store, and he ran the DJ International record label. That's the label that gave you so many house songs. When you go to these events, they're playing a bunch of house tracks. A bunch of these are DJ International songs. And Benji discovered a lot of these artists, gave a lot of these people their first breaks. And even when he was sick, he wasn't saying he was sick. You could tell that something wasn't right with Benji. But the last time we all saw him, it was fun, it was a party, he was having a good time. And then the next thing you know, Benji's gone. But heavily respect to the life of Benji Espinosa. He was a huge difference maker in the world of house music. And so heavily respect to Benji. I hate when the printers give these all different page numbers, because then you get lost.
Harv,
Yo.
we can only do one more dead person.
One more dead
Just
person?
one more dead person. That's it.
You are limiting my dead people?
I'm over here now. Just one more dead person.
We're respecting that. He said 10 minutes. He didn't say how many dead people you can talk about.
I feel like I'm getting the Eyewitness Funeral Home report. Are you working for Eyewitness Funeral Home?
Ramos is right there by the house. Anyhow, the pandemic has been a changer. It's also been a life taker. If there's a lesson to be learned, is that you really should enjoy life while you can. Don't be afraid to stand out, and don't shy away from helping others. It's okay. In the entertainment industry, I guess in life in general, too many are afraid to offer help to others and to share the spotlight. I'm not talking about dead people anymore. Stop laughing. Mikey likes to say that he helps because he was helped, and I'm pretty much the same way. I was helped as a kid, and I like to help as much as I can. One of my favorite autographs from the story, and he's alive. There's the actor George Lopez, who I met in 1992 doing radio interviews when he was George, but he wasn't George. And he signs this autograph to me not that long ago. And he says, "Thank you for treating me like somebody when I was a nobody." And now he's George Lopez. And I think that's what we should always focus on, is treating people like somebody, whether or not they're theoretically nobody. Because nobody's nobody, everybody's somebody. And you shouldn't judge them based on where they come from, what they look like, whether they write about dead people or alive people. Anyhow, thank you all for the respect. Thank you for your attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, Harv